Ankle fracture update. This is video 3 of 4 from the OTA Resident Core Curriculum Lecture Series. Slides by Dr. Christopher Lee. I'm Sakib Rahman narrating, and here we're going to talk about posterior malleolus and syndesmotic injuries. So the posterior malleolus helps to provide function through stability. It's the origin of the posterior inferior tib-fib ligament. It also is a weight-bearing surface, right? So it increases the surface area of the ankle joint itself. It's a little hard to see on the lateral, right? You have the fibula overlapping. An external rotation lateral view sometimes can help. CT scans can definitely be helpful here. And we talked a lot about in the last video how CT scans might really be needed if you want to fully understand a posterior malleolus fracture pattern. So the classic indication for fixation is greater than 25% of the joint surface on the lateral. This is a little bit controversial. The problem is the lateral view can inadequately visualize the posterior malleolus size and involvement. And whether or not 25% is, this sort of cutoff, again, is controversial. So when do you fix it? Well, certainly if you need stability, if there's posterior translation of the talus, and there's syndesmotic widening. This particular study looks at fixation of posterior malleolus fractures providing greater stability. Why? Well, because that is the origin of your PITFL, right? So a lot of times you'll fix a fracture and then you stress it, or fix the fibular fracture, you stress it, and then the syndesmosis opens. You're like, okay, well, now we have to put a syndesmotic screw or suture button. But what if there's a posterior malleolus fracture and you know the PITFL is on that fragment? Well, what if you just repair that fragment and provide some bony stability, at least to the posterior part of the syndesmosis? So compared to intact specimens, stiffness was restored to 70% after fixing the posterior malleolus and only to 40% after syndesmosis fixation. So fixing the posterior malleolus, at least in this study, potentially provides greater stability than just doing a syndesmotic repair. And here you can see, direct posterior fixation of the posterior malleolus, and there's a 2.1% rate of instability after posterior malfixation versus 13-fold higher syndesmotic rate and instability rate when treated with just syndesmotic repair in this study in 2017. Another reason you may want to fix the posterior malleolus is for articular congruence, right? And we talked about this in the previous video that increasing tibio-talar contact takes stress off of the remaining portion that's in contact. So that what that means is that if you take away part of the articular surface, you're now increasing that tibio-talar contact stress to everything else that's left behind. So to distribute the stress better, it's probably better to consider fixing these. Now, how do you fix them? Well, you could potentially fix from anteromedial to posterolateral, as shown here. That can work for certain fracture patterns. You may have to consider a plate fixation when you go posteriorly, directly posteriorly. This can be done through a posterolateral approach, for example, sometimes posteromedial approach. Screws may have to go from posterior to anterior. So which option's better, A to P screws or posterolateral plates? Well, sometimes it depends on the fracture pattern or what kind of injury pattern you're really treating. In this small series, 27 patients, they had higher post-op SMFA scores in the posterolateral plating group and trended towards better improvement in mobility and functional indices. So certainly not the most definitive evidence, but it is relevant for this discussion. Let's talk a little bit more about syndesmotic injury. It helps to resist external rotation, axial and lateral displacement of the talus, and with weight bearing, it allows for standard loading. So the syndesmosis, or the tissues that stabilize the syndesmosis, are the AITFL, the intraosseous ligament, the interosseous membrane, the PITFL, and the ITL, right? So there's other thing to keep in mind is there's a wide variation in the shape of the incisura. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a ball and cup, a little bit. Sometimes it's much more flat, and this varies from patient to patient. So you have to keep that in mind. How do you determine if instability is present? Well, we talked about this in previous video. You're going to do potentially a manual stress test. You can do a so-called cotton test, which is when after you fix a fibula intraoperatively, you grab it with a pointed reduction forceps and you literally try to displace it laterally. So when should you do manual stress tests? Well, certainly after you fix everything else. So you did a bimal fracture. Let's say you fix everything. Now you do a stress view and you see if you get this widening. So it's not that clear. Sometimes it's not clear that we're pulling in the right direction, right? So maybe there's greater instability in the sagittal plane. So something to keep in mind. What's the functional consequence of syndesmotic joint malreduction? Now remember, there's a lot of variability in the morphology of the joint itself. You really can't see that well with a lot of techniques, especially when you're not directly looking at the syndesmosis, how well it's reduced. And here you can see that you can potentially malreduce the syndesmosis, and it may not look so bad on X-ray, and then you get CT scan and realize it's malreduced. And in some studies, we have seen that they can have worse outcomes as a result. So remembering back to our radiographic lines and what should line up, you want to look at tib-fib overlap. You want to look at subluxation of the talus, medial clear space widening. On the lateral, you want to see where the posterior aspect of the fibula interacts with the plafond, and where are you, A to P. If you have the ability to do this, intra-op CT or fluoro can help to show you what's going on a little better and might reduce the likelihood of malreduction. Direct visualization over the tib-fib articulation anteriorly can maybe help to show you the joint, at least from that perspective. So where should you look? Well, in this paper, cadaveric paper, they advocate using the anterolateral plafond and anteromedial fibular articular surface as a reference, and compared this with the incisura method and found the articular surface method to be a little bit more reliable. So that's somewhere where you could potentially look when you're doing your reduction. If you're doing, your clamp reduction to close things down, you do have to be careful that you don't cause translation or overcompression. So there's a lot of technique involved with making sure that you don't malreduce these as you try to close them down or reduce them. Remember, you potentially have more sagittal plane instability as well. And here's where contralateral images can be helpful. So here you can see how there's a likelihood to potentially cause the fibula to translate anteriorly if you're not careful. Fixation options, also controversial. Studies have advocated for 3.5 millimeter screws versus 4.5, 1 screw versus 2 screws. Whether you should go bicortical in the tibia or actually stop short and allow for windshield wipering. To some extent, you can say it's dealer's choice. We really don't have definitive evidence of which treatment option. What about suture buttons? So there has been some evidence suggesting that suture buttons are a viable alternative, and some studies showing that it has no functional outcome differences, but can reduce your reoperation rate, right? So patients don't like to see broken screws, and sometimes surgeons who routinely remove them are subjecting their patients to additional operations. So when you do suture button technique, one thing you can say is your likelihood of reoperating is probably lower. All right, we're going to pause here and then we'll finish out the lecture in the last video.